Record. Fabulous. So, Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a lot about your business. What?
Yeah.
Oh, it's gone a funny colour. It's gone all funny. I'm going to.
Your lighting has gone.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's funny how that happens sometimes. Anyway, carry on.
So, yeah, I am a face yoga and I don't really have a title, but I suppose a face yoga and skin health instructor. I help women specifically, and I use face yoga as a tool to help women understand their skin health from a sort of wider perspective of mental health, hormones, lifestyle choices, nutrition, sleep patterns, and also from that point of self-acceptance of where you are at what stage of life you are as well. So I tend to work with women who are over 35 generally, although not always.
Yeah. And so how did you get involved with all of that?
Well, that's an interesting story. I'll try the abridged version for you.
No, please don't. Carry on with the version. That's what we're here for.
So I used to live on my boat with my husband. We lived on our boat for 8 years, and we traveled from England to Italy. We lived there for 3 years, and then my husband got a new job, and then we moved to the south of France. While I was in the south of France, I fell pregnant with my son, and it was after having my son and not a lot of space left on the boat to practice regular yoga. And some other things going on the deck and things like that. I didn't have a lot of space outside. I started to practice yoga on the pontoon. And for whatever reason, and I am no contortionist or anything, it attracted an audience. And people would just come and stand and watch me and interact with me. And yoga for me is kind of like a bit of a sacred place. And it really put me off. Now, they were very sweet and very encouraging, but at the same time, very off-putting because I couldn't focus. And I ended up in conversations and people were kind of joining in with me. And I mean, it was quite fun, but at the same time, I was like, this is just not working for me. Because the point of me doing it was to have a bit of headspace. And my husband worked away a lot and I didn't really have a support network. So I was on my own with my son pretty much 100% of the time. So those moments where I could do yoga on my own were so precious to me that I got really, really annoyed.
Yeah.
Which was kind of really defeating the point of doing it in the first place. So then I discovered face yoga. I'm not quite sure how I found it, how it came to me. I can't remember. I just remember one day going, wow, this looks fun. And I can do this inside. It doesn't really take any space. You don't need any tools, just your hands and an instructor. So I started doing online videos, really enjoyed it because I found that not only was it giving me physical benefits in my appearance, and I had a baby, I was sleep deprived and generally exhausted from feeding and all of those things that you get when you're a mum. And I found that actually it helped me mentally. It was giving me the same benefits that a full physical body yoga was giving me in terms of my mental health. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So because it helps relieve stress, you're doing something for yourself. So you're kind of ticking that self-care box. But also it works. It depends on who you train with. Like I trained with Danielle Collins. So I'm trained in the Danielle Collins face yoga method. And she's the world leading expert in face yoga. And she comes from a very holistic place. And in fact, our stories are very similar in that in our 20s, we both suffered from chronic fatigue and, we had to make significant life changes. So there's a lot of her story that I can really relate to because it was my story too. And when I started practicing, I saw that she did training. I was like, wow, this is amazing because she comes from it's exercise, it's acupressure, it's massage, and it's meditation, guided visualization, using affirmations. So it is a holistic package, and you're working on every element, your mind, your body, and your soul, if you choose to. And that's how I prefer to teach as well, in a very holistic way, as opposed to, I hate the term anti-aging. I think it should be abolished. But yeah, the hook of face yoga is it can help reduce lines and wrinkles and smooth out and lift and tone and all of those things. But actually, for me, that's the Brucey bonus. I love that people come back because it's how they feel about themselves, and the increase in confidence and self-esteem, and acceptance of where people are in life as well, and stages they're going through, which I think as you get, 35 plus, things do change, and it happens, like for me, it happened quite quickly. I know other people it's slower, but everyone's at that different point, and you don't really know. There's not a lot of help and guidance in the mainstream. You have to go searching for it, in my opinion and experience anyway.
Well, there's a lot of sort of concealment in health. There's a lot of ways that you can spend a lot of money on products that probably don't really make any difference, or surgery or Botox, or there's a lot in that regard, isn't there? Actually trying to, because it's easier, isn't it? It's easier to take the fix rather than to do the work of which, there is an effort involved, which a lot of people probably wouldn't choose to do, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. And I think as well, obviously it's, mass media messaging and marketing that we're kind of sold when it comes to aging. But I also think it's there's an underlying message of you shouldn't be doing this, and so you have to reverse it, as opposed to this is a completely normal process that every person goes through, men as well, and it is totally natural and normal.
I think I'm a bit unusual because I actually really have been craving getting wrinkles. I think it shows wisdom. I think it shows, I think there's such a beauty with age. I think how great that we've been through so many experiences. I've got laughter lines in around my eyes. They come when I laugh and smile, so why wouldn't
we you'll see, I'm a face yoga teacher, but when I smile, I've got wrinkles. I'm not, but that's kind of the point as well. Like, I'm not trying to be picture perfect.
No.
And probably never will.
We're human, we are. Exactly. Aging is a natural process, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's why this is. So for me, face yoga is a very supportive tool to use as you age, because we do lose our estrogen, we do lose our collagen. Now, these are important things to our skin. And by doing things like face yoga, even just a few minutes a day, you're going to help build the collagen. You're going to help maintain the health of the layers of your skin. So your collagen is in the second layer of your skin, and that is really the building blocks of your skin. And then there are 1,000 ways that you can increase your collagen intake, which is a whole other thing. But for the main part, it is a supportive way to help you go through different stages of your life. Equally, you can do it when you're 18 if you want to. There's no hard and fast rules. But I think you're not really as self-aware of these things when you're younger as to when you're older. And again, I think that comes down to a lot of messaging that we get as well.
When you're that age as well, you're not really the concept of what you're going to be like when you're 25 is quite hard to imagine, isn't it?
It completely is. It's so true. Yeah, you can't even believe that you're going to be 40 one day. When I was 40 last year, and yeah, I was a bit like, wow. But it also gave me a bit of a kick as well. Like, right, sort yourself out.
Absolutely. I did that when I was 40. Yeah, I'm turning 50 this year. So,
Oh,
yes.
never a day over 40 for sure.
Thank you. You're too kind. So, tell me about what I'm fascinated about as well is your nomadic lifestyle. How
Ah,
did you, before you met your husband, were you in around and about and traveling, etc.? Or
yes, I was. So Adam and I met at Maritime College. Um, when I was 19, I was working for the court service in Bolton as an admin officer.
okay,
And
fascinating.
I was, to be honest, I was totally bored.
Okay.
And I didn't know whether I didn't really know what to do with my life because college had kind of gone a bit strange and I didn't finish and I ended up leaving and I was sort of in a rut really and I didn't know what to do. And then a colleague came in with an advert in the paper to join the Merchant Navy as a deck officer cadet. And I was looking for a job that came with training, that came with prospects, and I would get some form of qualification at the end of it, like a formal qualification. And this ticked all of my boxes. So I applied. A couple of weeks later, I was interviewed, and 6 weeks later, I moved to Southampton to start my career in the Merchant Navy.
Wow.
So I was trained to work on container ships initially. And I used to go from Thamesport to Antwerp, Le Havre to Montreal on a run. That was the first year I did. And then the second year, I can't remember what happened the second year. I remember joining in Thamesport again, but I can't remember where I went. And then you do like a 4-month period at sea, and you do a couple of months at college, or you do 6 months at college and then 4 months at sea. It sort of changed depending on where you were. And it was
So have you got good sea legs?
better than I used to have. It was awful.
Oh no.
I remember, yeah. I remember so when we had our boat, we sailed from Falmouth to Gibraltar. I spent the whole week being sick. It was awful.
Oh.
Honestly, I got to Gibraltar and Adam was saying like my name and I was like, who? I was delirious, completely delirious. Because I was so dehydrated. I couldn't keep food down. It was awful. And then there was the other time when I crossed the Atlantic on the container ship, and yeah, it was really rough. We basically got caught in a hurricane after hurricane after hurricane.
Oh.
And where the pitch was like this, and yeah, it was rolling all over the place. And they were very sweet. So I worked with all Indian officers and all Indian crew, and they handed me a bucket and basically like tied it around my neck so I could walk around with the bucket. So glam.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. But then there was amazing times as well, sunrises and sunsets at sea are just phenomenal. The moon, the stars, things you see, the phosphorescence, the sea snakes in the Gulf, and like jellyfish like you've never seen in your life. Just amazing.
And all the dolphins as well. I love
Yeah, massive. And whales.
them.
Yeah. And then from there, I went and worked as a deck of, well, as I was still a trainee then when I moved across for the RFA. So I worked on supply ships to the Royal Navy. So I was part of the Qetello group in 2003, supporting the troops out in the Gulf. I was there for 4 months actually.
Wow.
On ships, yeah.
How was that?
That was an experience for sure. I mean, we were relatively safe. Funnily enough, my husband at the time was on a different ship, and he worked for ships that work with the army. And he was going in and out of Iraq at the time. Though we didn't know each other that well at that point, so we didn't know that we were both there. I mostly stayed around the Bahrain area and then transited up and down. And I was working on a ship that, had supplies, food, ammunition, that kind of thing. So completely different to what I do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Poles apart. So then what made you leave that, and what did you do after that?
So in hindsight, I didn't know that I was exhausted, but it was real exhaustion that that sort of stopped me going. I just got to a point, and it's obviously a very male dominated environment, and with that come challenges. Although I, generally was very well received and I had a very good support network at work. But I got to the point I'm going, do I really want to do this anymore? And I think it came down to exhaustion. And I sort of, again, in looking back, you don't realize at the time, when I did my GCSEs, I put my heart and soul into getting those exams. I worked myself to the bone, and then I got really poorly, but I couldn't explain what that poorliness was. And I was in a state of depression and tiredness. My body was aching, but I couldn't express that to my mum. So she was like clutching at straws, taking me to the doctor. What's going on? There was nothing wrong with her. So the same thing started to happen at this point in my life as well. And I thought, no, something isn't right here. So I left working away full-time, but for months at end on ships. And I went and worked for Red Funnel, and I used to drive the Red Funnel ferries.
No way.
Yeah, I did it as a temp thing whilst I got myself sorted. So yeah, I did that for a while. And then I actually got a job with Hampshire Police in the admin offices in Southampton, one of their police stations. And growing up, I always wanted to be a lawyer. So when I went to go to college after school, the course I actually wanted to do had been cancelled, and I didn't have a plan B.
Right.
And that's why I ended up in a bit of a mess and not finishing and working for the courts instead. So I've always had this interest in law and rights, I suppose, and people, accessing their rights and knowing their rights and justice. So when I went to work for them, I started a part-time law degree. So I went back to university after getting my qualifications from C.
Wow.
And then I thought, well, maybe I could do, eventually shipping law. In the meantime, I met my husband. My life completely changed again. So I got my law degree, and shortly after burned out again, and then spent 2 years with chronic fatigue. Got married, and then after that we lived in Southampton, or outside of Southampton, and I went back into shipping as a ships agent. So I used to work at Fawley Refinery and around the ports in the south coast, doing all the documentation for the ships coming in and out, immigration, customs, cargo information, bill of sale, things like that for cargo. And then I went and started a couple of years later, I worked again for the Royal Navy as a contractor and helped set up a call center, I suppose you'd call it, for anti-piracy in the maritime sector. Okay. So basically catching pirates. So there was at the time a lot of ships going through the Red Sea, and there were a lot of activity around there. It's less so now. So we would support ships in all areas really that were having any issues, and that included issues on board like blackouts and engine failures, so that we knew that they were almost a sitting duck, and we could keep checking in with them and get information on where they were. And I helped set that up and did all the training for new recruits and standard operating procedures and things like that.
Amazing. That's great to have under your belt.
It's very different, as they say.
Yeah, complete turnaround.
Yeah.
And I guess purely because of your own physical health. What I'm picking up on some of what you're saying is actually you've worked really hard. Were you somebody who, or are you somebody who's a bit of a perfectionist? Do you think you've gone to the extremes of
I think you've nailed it on the head there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a perfectionist. I'm trying to be less so now. Like I sort of 80% is okay. Like I'm getting there. Before, like I wouldn't be able to do anything unless it was 100%.
Yeah.
And for example, I used to, so honestly, I probably missed out on so much of my childhood because I'd sit there and practice my handwriting because my handwriting had to be perfect.
Wow.
But it's something I enjoyed doing as well. So, you know, but it was driven by perfection. So not so healthy.
I was thinking maybe you're a Virgo, but are you what star sign are you?
I'm a Cancerian.
A Cancerian. Okay, so are you near a Virgo sign?
No, I'm on the border with Gemini.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't think Cancerians were generally very perfectionists. Well, is that a Cancerian trait?
I don't think so. I think it's just hereditary.
Okay.
So I think it's in the genes. So I see it. My grandfather on my mum's side was a painter and decorator, but very skilled and did a lot of gold leaf work and sign writing.
Oh, wow.
And things like that. Yeah, he was very well respected in his day. He was very well known. And even now you can go around Wigan in the Northwest and there are still, you know, signs that my grandpa probably wrote.
Lovely.
Yeah, so he was very much a perfectionist. Very sweet, very nice. And not with us, you know, it wasn't like we had to be perfect or anything like that, but in his work he was a perfectionist. And he was the kind of person that you would you know, he'd help us with our homework, with maths or whatever, and you do your calculations, and you know, we would, as teenagers, we'd be using calculators, but he was like, well, do you not want to check your calculators right? And he'd do long form calculations to double check the calculator was correct.
Brilliant. I've never heard of that before.
So it probably, and I guess, yeah, my auntie's a bit the same. My mum in her own way is a bit the same. I think it's in the genes.
And so as you are learning not to be a reformed perfectionist, let's call you the reformed perfectionist.
Reforming is probably more accurate.
Okay, reforming. It's a work in progress. Do you find that you know, it's in line with mental health as well, that actually the more your mental health is okay, the less you need to be worried about the finer details? And
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that has also come from having my little boy and being on my own without any help.
Yeah,
I've had to learn that it's okay if the house isn't 100% tidy, if it's not 100% clean.
Yeah,
you know, if it got to a point, I think, where the basics: are we eating? Are we cleaning fairly regularly? And are we sleeping okay? And you know, I did hit rock bottom at one point, and that was the three things: like, are we getting through each day? And if the answer was yes, then we're doing okay. Because you can't.
It's been really tough doing that on your own without the support of family, or that's the kind of the basics for people, isn't it, to have that, because it's a tough time, really tough time. And how did you get through that?
Honestly, I'm not quite sure.
Right.
But I think I'm the kind of person that you can put me in any situation and I'll find a way. I'll just get on with it.
Yeah.
That is kind of my personality. It's not easy. And then I'll come out the other end and I'll fall apart.
Yeah.
So like when I worked really hard for my exams, I got what I needed and I got really good grades and I was super happy, but there was a consequence to that.
Yeah.
So I think if you're in a situation and you don't have any other way to mange, you just get on with it, because especially when you have a baby, you've got this young
there's no other
bundle of joy that is completely reliant on you and your ability. You've got to step up. You just have to.
I've always found that actually, you know, when I traveled the world on my own, there was no point in being, I couldn't be ill because there was no one there to look after me. So um I had to just, and amazingly, I didn't get a cold, I didn't get anything, you know,
Wow.
nothing for a whole year.
Wow.
And I mean, admittedly, I was in very fair climates all the time. So, but yeah, it's amazing how powerful we are, and when we need to be. But then once you've been that resilient and you come to a point where you can be looked after and you can be nurtured, then the body goes, right, I can crash now.
To be honest, that is what happened the other week when I went on holiday. I was exhausted before I went, and I was so lucky. We went to Switzerland for a skiing holiday with my husband's family. So there was 9 of us in total. And I've been on my own. He's been away. I've been on my own with Hector, getting everything ready, flying around with him, getting him there, and all of this sort of stuff. And he hadn't been sleeping. He hadn't slept a night for weeks, you know, a full night for a long time. So I was quite tired and I was feeling the effects of it. And the first day I did about 2 hours of skiing, and then I started to feel a bit achy, and I was like, oh, well, it's because I'm a bit unfit. I've not done much exercise recently, and it's just the effect of skiing. The next day we went out again. I was like, I don't think I can do this. I feel really rough. And I ended up just sitting at the end of the mountain and with all of the bags being sort of the camp. And the kids would just come backwards and forwards to me for snacks and things when they wanted something. And then from there, I was in bed for the rest of the week. But I had, Hector was occupied. He was with his dad and his cousins and my brother and his wife, brother-in-law, sorry, and his wife. And so I think it was that. It was like my brother was like, it's okay, you can be ill now. You can get this out of your system. Because I had a support network there.
It's annoying that it happens to happen on the time when you would like to be having fun and enjoying yourself. And
and I missed out on so much, especially Hector's 5 and he's been skiing for a few years now, but he's really starting to get it. And so I missed out on so much seeing him enjoying himself, which was super sad. But at the same time, my husband doesn't get a lot of one-on-one time with him because he's away so much. So it was actually really nice for him to have that time with Hector on his own, which he wouldn't have got unless I was ill.
Lovely. Good. So tell me about your face yoga. Is it purely one-on-one with people, or do you do kind of group stuff? Or
so I do one-on-ones, absolutely. And I call them a kind of bespoke face yoga starter pack. So the way that works is that you book in with me, and then I send you a questionnaire, and from the questionnaire, I design a bespoke package that is tailored to your needs based on the questions. So things like, do you work in an office? Are you working in a physical job? Do you spend a lot of time on your phone? All of these things to try and figure out, do you get migraines? Do you have health problems? All of these sort of things. And then I can figure out the best package. I put that together, and then we have a half an hour video call like this on Zoom or whatever, where I teach you the exercises. But it's breathing, it's facial exercises, it's acupressure, it's massage, and then a guided visualization. So we teach you all of that and ask any questions, obviously. And then afterwards, you get a follow-up PDF. Now, I'm very keen on making everything I do as mobile friendly as possible, because I appreciate that most people, particularly women, mums especially, don't have time to go and get their laptop out, log on, find where they need to be, and then get the exercises and then do the work. So the PDF can be saved to your home screen, and within the PDF is the individual video for each exercise.
Oh, clever.
So then you can just play that. And the thing with face yoga is, unlike a sort of traditional yoga class, you can do the exercises in isolation. So if you have a couple of minutes and think, oh, I'm starting to get a headache, you can go, oh, I know, I'll just play that video. It takes 2 minutes, not even. And it will really, really help. Okay. So that's kind of how I work with one-to-one clients. And then I also have a beginner's face yoga online course. So this is a 4-week course, which is divided into 24 videos. And then each week you repeat the lesson for a week. The next week you move on, and each week builds on the previous week. So you start with the foundations, you then go to strength, you then go to plump and sculpt, and then you go to glow. And within this, you also have affirmations and guided visualizations to help work on your self-acceptance and appreciate who you are. So the foundations one's really important because it's understanding your face, it's understanding your muscles, probably muscles you didn't even know were there. You've got 57 muscles in your face. So, and how we use them, you know, if you do get tension headaches, you're using your forehead probably a little bit too much. Let's work on strengthening the eye muscles, and that will relieve the tension in the forehead. Equally the shoulders and things like that. So there's lots of things that we can do. And that's a self-led online course with a support group that I'm in as well. So you can ask questions, you can post photos, and that's all through my website.
Brilliant. That's great.
Yeah.
And what is the name of your website?
It's Qetello.com, which is Qetello.com. And I chose that because it means destiny.
Beautiful. That's lovely. Yeah. So one of the questions I always ask people when I'm interviewing them is, how do you feel? How are you feeling in this moment?
Oh, that's a great question. How am I feeling in this moment? Energized, I suppose. Yeah. Right now, happy, energized. Love chatting to you. I feel like you're giving me a hug, actually.
Brilliant. Good. That's lovely. That's really good.
Yeah.
Fabulous. That's great. Yeah. I like to work with people on their emotional level and to help them to uncover any kind of emotions that they may or may not realize that are there sitting there, and just to sit with them for a while, because I personally have not sat with my emotions for a long time through grief and sadness and loss. And losing my father to cancer was a big impact on my life.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago now. It's 15 years ago now, but it's also been the best thing that ever happened to me, because it's given me so much growth and so much understanding and so many ways in which to support other people. So I'm really passionate about helping people to sit with their feelings and to be okay with that, because
yeah,
as I say, we always teach what we need to learn. The more I can sit in those emotions with other people and experience them and go there myself. And so so I'm a big advocate of people being, and to be able to also, because often when I ask this question to people, obviously we're live in the group and we're going on the recording, it's not always immediately obvious, or people don't feel liberated enough to really get to the truth of what they're feeling. So often the when I ask people how they're feeling, it's a light, it's a bright, it's a positive experience. And but within, behind the closed doors, we can talk about a different emotion that might also be arising too. So I think I'm fascinated by the darkness because I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of light in my life. So I want to be able to experience that feeling of freedom too. So which is why I love interviewing people as well for this, because I think it's fascinating to hear about people's life stories. And we were talking very interestingly, straight to the point, before we started recording, about how perhaps maybe there was issues within birth, and within pregnancy for you as a baby, and that may be continuing to set the path. for your life. And it was interesting
Really
to discuss
fascinating.
that sort of element of, we imagine that life begins after the womb, but actually it doesn't. And
No.
we also have ancestry as well, that we're part of a long line of people. So so it's really fascinating to explore all of that, and to understand it, and to be light with it as well, not to take it too seriously. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you were saying before about the sort of birth journey and mother and baby is fascinating. I'm definitely going to look into that a bit more.
Yeah, I recommend it. I think it's a beautiful experience. So where are you based at the moment? You haven't shared that with.
Oh, I'm actually in Malta.
Oh, fabulous. So, what's the weather like today?
Actually overcast. I thought it might rain earlier, and I thought, oh great, because I could put the blinds up and I'll have a really nice natural light. Then the sun came out and ruined everything. I'm joking. I'm very grateful for the sun. I spent not this winter gone, but the year before in the UK, and I wasn't a fan. I hadn't lived in the UK for 8 years. I've been living in the Med most of the time, or going to South Africa for Christmas. So I wasn't used to such a dark Christmas.
So what happened for you then in lockdown?
Well, that's an interesting story, because we were living on the boat. My husband was working full time, and Hector's school, I say school, it was, so in France, they start school just the year they turn 3. So he just started, he was 2 3/4 or something when he started in the first year. And it didn't go very well. And then they closed. So we were thinking, well, we can't be on a boat with one room, basically, it's sort of one communal room with a 3-year-old full time, and Adam working sort of from 8 till 7 every day, and maybe later. So we actually phoned his dad, who was in Switzerland at the time, and said, do you have plans to come back to the UK? And he said, no, not for the moment. I'm just going to sit it out in Switzerland and see what happens. So we flew within sort of 4 hours of France going into lockdown. We'd booked flights, we packed everything up, and we flew from France to the UK. And the first lockdown we spent at my father-in-law's house in Newbury.
Oh, wow.
Because where he has an office and he has a bit more, a bit more space, a garden, because it just wasn't going to be manageable on the boat, and trying to get an apartment at such short notice was not possible either. So we did that, and then we went back to France after lockdown had finished. Everything was okay. We were back on the boat, and then the year just after Christmas, France went back into lockdown and the schools closed again. We were like, what are we going to do now? And we'd actually spent Christmas in Switzerland. So we spoke to his dad, was like, can we go back? So we threw everything in the car, my car and Adam's car. We both drove to Switzerland, and we spent the second lockdown, the first 2 months of it in Switzerland. And then we spent 2 months in the UK, and then we spent 2 months in Spain, and then we spent the rest of the time in France.
Oh my goodness. So you were jet setting around quite a lot.
Yeah,
then.
because Adam needed to work away, and we were worried that we'd end up being locked down in separate countries.
Right.
Because everybody was doing something different, and everyone's rules were slightly different. I mean, traveling through was a bit of a nightmare, but a lot of paperwork involved, but doable. And we decided that whatever he needed to do, we'd go with him, because the thought of having to tell Hector that his daddy was in the country and he couldn't leave, and I didn't know when he was coming home, didn't really appeal to me. No. I'd much rather uproot us and stick it out, which is why Hector and I have got a really strong connection, because we've, up until him going to school in September here full time, we've spent pretty much 24/7 together since he was born.
Wow.
I think we've maybe I've had one night away for a conference, but other than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible, isn't it?
So we are quite connected, which is now proving a little bit tricky, but
yeah,
we're working on that.
It'll change in time, won't it? And then you'll be worrying why that's not around.
I know. When he's like 14 and doesn't even want to know me, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming along today. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your business, about you, about whatever, something coming up in the future, whatever?
If you haven't tried face yoga and you want to give it a go, I do have a free mini course on my website as well. I also have a Facebook group where I do face yoga Friday every week, most weeks when I'm not poorly. And I usually put a poll out and the group members vote on what they want to see that week.
Okay.
And then on a Friday, I share that. So if you want to dip your toe in and have a little look and find out some more, then there are two options. And I'm also into skin health. So I have chronic eczema and other skin conditions. And there's a lot of, for me, GPs don't have the time to be able to explain things properly. They don't have the knowledge necessarily either, because most of them are not trained in any kind of dermatology. So I've just done an introductory certificate into dermatology because I want to be able to help more people with skin issues like myself. And through having to heal myself, I've been on lots of courses and things like that. So I'm running a gut health and your skin workshop.
I'm just about to ask how much of that is gut related.
So much. Yeah, so much of it is gut related. And there's the skin mind gut axis. So they're all interconnected. And if your gut health is off, then you also have a microbiome on your skin. So you have a skin microbiota, and that can be changed, and you find the same bacteria on your skin that you do in your guts. And so they all...
So therefore, some topical things will work then for skin.
Yeah, so if you put topical probiotics on, for example, that could work for skin. Which is why when you have sunburn and things like that, and even eczema, because it's so cooling and it's got the probiotics, a natural yogurt, because it does contain a natural probiotic, can be soothing for the skin.
How fascinating. Yeah. So does that mean we should be using that every day?
Not necessarily. And this is the thing, there's no one system for everybody. It's so unique because everybody will have different triggers. Everybody will have different preferences over foods and lifestyle choices. So no. And also, when we talk about pre and probiotics, we can get so much from our diet if we choose to. You don't necessarily have to take a supplement. And even if you do take a supplement, you don't necessarily need it every day. So it's very individualized. So my mission with my business is to educate, inspire, and empower women to have their healthiest and happiest skin. And by doing that, they can make informed choices. They can actually understand where their body is at and make the decisions for themselves. That's my intention anyway.
Great. That sounds brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along today and chatting.
Thank you for having me.
If anyone has any questions, they can put them in the chat and later, and we can. You're in the group now, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. And so thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Amanda. It's been such a pleasure.
Very well.